Your expectations are your greatest financial liability. I think mindset is everything. You need to believe that you have the power to take an action and create an outcome in the world. You hear someone say, that's just the way I am. That is self-defeating in the highest order.
A lot of people stress on goal setting, but you speak a lot about anti-goals as well.
Maybe you want to become the CEO. The anti-goal associated with that might be that you don't want to end up losing your family. The top 10 richest people in the world on the Forbes 100 list have 13 combined divorces among them. What's the win? What am I supposed to be celebrating? A time billionaire is someone that has over 1 billion seconds left in their life. You ask people, would you trade lives with Warren Buffett? He's 95 years old, so you would not trade his $130 billion for the amount of time that you have left on this planet. So the time that you have has...
One of the most Googled questions is, how do I sleep better?
So before bed, every single night, I sit down and I do what I call my 1-1-1 journaling method, which is lots of high performers use it. The Feynman Technique is the most powerful way to learn anything new.
There is like a loneliness epidemic.
The Harvard study of adult development found was that the single greatest predictor of health at age 80 was relationship satisfaction at age 50. 15% of men say that they don't have a single close friend. I have had moments in my life where I am growing and changing, interested in different things, where it suddenly feels like I am no longer speaking the same language as the friends that were from my prior life. Falling in love is very easy, and growing in love is very, very hard.
You talk about something called the health, herd, and heart framework. What is it?
The best. This has changed my relationship with my wife. I would say this is particularly impactful for a romantic relationship and particularly impactful for any men out there that are listening.
You talk about the 5 pillars of financial wealth. What are they?
Mark Zuckerberg. All of a sudden he went from being like nerdy, skinny guy to he's
To
getting super
wrestling,
fit.
yeah.
Jeff Bezos, the same thing, because all of them are starting to realize when I go and meet with these extraordinary people, the number one question I get asked about is,
Hi Sahil, welcome to Humans of Bombay Realign. So happy to meet you finally.
I know, I feel like it's been a long time coming. I'm thrilled to do it in person.
So, we were thinking of how to introduce you, and I was like, oh my God, he's just like so many different things. So let me ask you, like, how do you introduce yourself? What do you say? Yeah.
This is hard. It's hard for me. This is a funny thing too. And for a lot of young people out there, you can probably resonate with this, that like, having the very simple, clear way of defining who you are and what you're doing is very comforting. And so like when I had my old job and I was working in finance, I had the like one-liner. I would just say like, oh, I'm a vice president at this firm.
Yeah.
And it was very clear and it was super easy. You're at like a cocktail party and people ask you and you say the one thing, it sounds impressive and you kind of move on. And going down a more entrepreneurial path, you don't really know, like, how do you define yourself? So now I guess I would say I'm a writer and entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I do a lot of different things. Like I have a holding company, I have an investment fund I invest out of, but fundamentally what I really care about is writing and sharing ideas with the world that create positive ripples out in the world.
Yeah, okay, that's an amazing and a very unique title. So we'll go with that one.
Yeah.
So, I want to start off with something that you talk very passionately about, which is wealth and 5 different types of wealth, which is there's social, there's mental, there's physical, there's time, which I thought was the most interesting one, and I will definitely get to that. And which one did I miss? Emotional? Financial. Oh, wow. Okay.
The one that everyone knows about.
Yeah, we must.
Yeah.
But if you really had to talk about your personal journey, what has wealth been to you, truly, holistically?
My idea of wealth has fundamentally changed so much over the last few years. And this book is really a manifestation of that journey. It's not about me, but the idea is a manifestation of the journey that I've been on. In 2021, I had a conversation with an old friend that changed the course of my life. I was out to a drink with this old friend, and he was asking how I was doing. And I sort of answered with the like standard, I'm good, busy, right? It's like what we all get so accustomed to saying. You're like, yeah, I'm busy, I'm good. And he kind of looked at me and like saw straight through it and asked again, how are you doing? And I told him I was really struggling with a handful of things, one of which was I was living really far away from my parents, who are getting older, and we're living on the East Coast. We were on the West Coast, 3,000 miles away. And he asked, how often do you see them? And I said, once a year. And he said, how old are they? I said, mid-60s. And he looked at me and he said, okay, so you're going to see them 15 more times before they die.
Oh my God.
And I remember having this sensation that I had just gotten punched in the gut, that my parents, who are people that I'm arguably closest to in the entire world, that I had that few moments left with them. And I realized in that moment that if I didn't make a change, a dramatic change in the way that I was living, how I was living my life, and how I was defining my own priorities, that I was going to wake up one day and those moments that I had left were going to be gone. And the next morning, I told my wife that I wanted to make that change, that I thought we should move across the country to be back closer to my family. And God bless her, she said, okay. And the last 3 years have been a journey to redefining those priorities, to building a life around those things that have much more meaning and texture than what I had previously believed. And so when I think about my own journey and what wealth and what that meaning has been for me, it's really been transitioning from this entire life built around financial wealth, built around making money, which when you're young feels like the only thing in the world. It's the only thing you can measure clearly. It's the thing that everyone tells you to focus on because it's what makes you feel and sound impressive, to building a much more holistic definition of what a wealthy life looks like to me.
Yeah, so tell me, what does it look like to you outside of
all of those things?
Yeah.
So it's redefining the priorities from just being focused on money to being focused on these 5 types of wealth. So time, that's the idea that you have control over how you are spending your time and who you're spending it with, what you're doing, what you're working on. It's social wealth. That's your relationships, your people that you're connected to, both in terms of depth, like your family, like your closest friends, and the broader network, the broader community that you interact with. It's mental wealth, which is my purpose, my ability to actually engage with things on a daily basis that I feel connected to, that I feel meaning around and grow around those things. And my ability to create space in my daily life, like to have spirituality and meditation, to create that space that allows you to sort of step back from all of the stimulus that you experience daily. It's the physical wealth, which is all about your health, your vitality, some of these things that I share so much about, my health routines and the things that I'm doing on a daily basis. And then it's financial wealth. But in particular with financial wealth, what I've really centered around is this idea of what my definition is of an enough life. What I mean by that is it's very easy to allow your expectations to continue to inflate over the course of your life. And it's very easy to allow that to subconsciously happen. Your expectations are your greatest financial liability. What I mean by that is if your expectations rise faster than your assets, you will never feel wealthy. You will never feel like you have enough because you're constantly chasing that rising expectation level. So coming to terms with that and clearly defining and imagining what your version of enough looks like is the tried and true pathway to truly feeling that wealthy existence.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you speak about the journey, right? Like you've gone from being, like you said, in finance to a holding company, to an author, to just being a thought leader, right? Like where people can truly resonate with the things that you say because it just adds up. Like because you provide the color, you provide the fabric, which is a necessary to provide that context. How important has mindset and the evolution of your mindset been in this journey?
I think mindset is everything, because all of your actions fundamentally follow whatever your mindset is around them. And when I think of mindset, I actually don't think of like the like sort of flowery woo-woo version of mindset and putting your energy out into the world. I really think of it in a concrete way, which is you need to believe that you have the power to take an action and create an outcome in the world. Yeah. That is fundamentally what everything is about. Like any piece of content that I share in the world, it's about that. You have the power to take an action and create a desired outcome. If you don't believe that, you feel powerless. You feel hopeless because you cannot change your circumstance. If you feel that, if you believe that you have that power, you can do anything. It's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of execution of that daily action that is going to create your desired outcome. It might take 5 years, it might take 10 years, it might take 20 years, but you know you're going to get there. So everything that I share fundamentally comes down to that. It fundamentally comes down to proving to people that they have that power within them to take an action and create an outcome. And that's why I'm such a big believer in the tiny action that proves that to you on a daily basis. Because if you are feeling lost, if you're feeling powerless, the most important thing that you can possibly do is convince yourself that you have that power.
Yeah.
Because that's what's missing. So take the one tiny action that is going to get you that tiny outcome and start rewiring your brain, start changing your mindset about what you are capable of doing in your own world.
Yeah. So a lot of what you're saying is obviously awareness, firstly, that you do have the control and the power over whatever it is that you may decide to do in terms of actions or decisions. But the second also has to do with like a growth mindset, right? So when you talk about a growth mindset, and the thing is that it's such a like overly used term on the internet, which is like everybody's talking about growth mindset, either personally or professionally, but nobody's actually talking to you about what it entails. So what is growth mindset to you?
It's just believing that you are capable of change and believing that you are dynamic as a human being. And I think that the saddest thing in the world is when I hear people talk about themselves using static terminology.
Yeah.
If you hear someone say, that's just the way I am, or that's just how I am, I think that's the saddest thing in the world, because that is self-defeating in the highest order. That's it's telling yourself that you're not capable of doing anything. You're not capable of change. You're not capable of taking that action that creates the outcome. And so the belief, all it is just reminding yourself that you're capable of change. And part of that is just zooming out and recognizing that you have changed. Like when people feel stuck and when they feel static, if you could just tell that person to zoom out and remind yourself that your 3 years ago version of yourself would be blown away by where you are today, or by what you've accomplished or what you've changed. Because when you're stuck in the moment, oftentimes the days kind of look like this. You're like up and down. There's bad days, there's good days. It's all like jumpy all over the place. But when you zoom out to like a 5-year, 10-year time horizon, you might recognize that the trend line is actually very good.
It's upward.
Yeah, it's upward because, again, you're like, especially when you're young, everyone is focused on where they currently are in comparison to everyone around them. You're like, you live in a city especially, or you're in a, on a track, or your family cares about the track you're on. Everything about your life is like, where am I currently compared to all of the people around me? Did I get Forbes 30 under 30? Did I get whatever medal or award or achievement or whatever the latest, greatest thing is? When what really matters is not where you currently are, and it's certainly not the comparison, it's what the trend line is.
Yeah.
Because if I'm currently down here and I'm in a bad spot, but my trend line is like exceptional and shooting and rising up, that's a great place to be in.
It's a rounding off error.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And the thing is that with social media, it's so easy to draw comparisons, not with yourself, but with whatever you see online, which is more often than not just the victory syndrome, right? Like, this is what I achieved, whether it's on LinkedIn, there are people posting about their promotions, they're posting about a project they completed, about how much investment they've raised. It's like nonstop. Like I see it on my feed all the time. Or on Instagram where people are holidaying and like super exotic locations, like I'm stuck in this like grubby office and like, my life sucks effectively. Talk to me about the life raiser concept that you speak about often, or you are going to speak about in your book, and how does it kind of intersect with everything that we've spoken about?
Yeah. So the life raiser is one of my favorite ideas that is raised in the book. This goes back to one of my favorite movies. I'm not sure if you've seen Apollo 13, which is like a very famous American movie with Tom Hanks. Okay. It's about the Apollo 13 space mission, which is a true story.
I've seen it online. I've just never like clicked. I should.
You should watch the movie because the movie is remarkable.
Okay.
Anyone that hasn't seen it, highly recommend. I also love Tom Hanks.
Tom Hanks is great.
Basically, the storyline is, it's a true story. The Apollo 13 space mission was this space mission that was going to the moon. And a couple of days into the space flight, there was a critical failure on the spaceship. And basically, it was totally unclear if they were going to be able to get home or if these 3 astronauts were going to die. And in the movie, there's this climactic final scene where they're not sure if they're going to be able to get back into the atmosphere because they don't have the computer. The computers are no longer working. And normally, the computers would be helping you navigate your way into the atmosphere. And what they find is that basically, if they go in too shallow, they're going to shoot off into space and die. Or if they go in too steep, they're going to just explode because it's so hot. And so they have to find the perfect angle to come in. And Tom Hanks has this pivotal moment where what he recognizes is he can manually do it by focusing on putting the Earth into this tiny little triangular window that's on the spaceship. And that if he holds the Earth in that window, it's going to allow them to stay steady at the correct angle. He just has to maintain that. And that, as an idea, is a really powerful metaphor for life. What it is it's taking a single focus and allowing you to simplify all of these millions of complex variables that exist in a chaotic situation and just hone in on one thing that really matters to get to the end point that is desired. That principle applies to your life. And that is what the life razor is. The life razor is this idea that you have a single unifying point of focus during all the chaotic moments of your life that allows you to cut through the noise and make the right decisions in those moments.
Like a North Star.
What's that?
A North Star?
Yes, like a North Star. Like a North Star, a very simple, single unifying idea. And the way that I think about it is a single statement that you would make that allows you to identify as the type of person that you want to be in a moment. And this will change over different seasons of your life, but in a moment, knowing what that is. I'll give you a great example of one. Mark Randolph was one of the founders of Netflix. He's a very well-known guy. He has this concept that during the early days of Netflix, when he founded this company, he never missed a Tuesday dinner with his wife. He had this rule that at 5 p.m. on Tuesdays, he would leave the office, starting this incredible startup, very busy. He would leave at 5 p.m. to have a date night dinner with his wife. And when I spoke to him and interviewed him for the book, the thing that comes out is that this had nothing to do with the actual dinner itself. It was all about what it signaled, the ripple effects that it created in his life. It was a signal to his wife that he prioritized her over the things that he was doing professionally, that he prioritized their family over his professional life. It was a signal to his employees and to the team that they should all do the same, that they should take their personal lives very seriously and prioritize these relationships and things that go beyond work. And so it was this single idea of saying, I never miss a Tuesday dinner, that had these positive ripple effects into all of these other areas of his life. It was a single point of focus that allowed him to cut through the noise when there was chaos in his world. I love that idea as a broad principle that we all need. We all need our version of what is the Tuesday dinner in your life. So for me, mine is I will coach my son's sports teams. And to me, what that means is that I'm the type of father and husband that shows up for my family, that I will turn down certain professional opportunities to make sure that I prioritize my family, that I'm the type of person as a community leader and as a father and as a husband that does that is what I place at the highest rank within my world order. So thinking about that question, identifying what that means to you and what your life razor is, I think is a very, very powerful exercise that people can go through to cut through the noise in their own life.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. Because that just helps you optimize for decision making, right? Which is where people oftentimes get stuck. How do I kind of pick between these two worlds, say professional and personal, or even for social commitments that are important, but you're just I'm too busy, I'm stuck at work. Which way do you kind of navigate it? It's such a relative problem that most people face today. Which brings me to my next question is, you have a very interesting perception about productivity. Most people think that to be productive is to do more in less time. And you opt for a more balanced approach. So how do you look at productivity and why?
I think that time and energy are very different things. And conflating the two actually gets you into a lot of trouble. So I could spend an hour with you and we could have a conversation. But if I'm on my phone the entire time I'm here, we're not going to feel very connected after that conversation. Similarly, we might spend 10 minutes together, but if I'm truly present and listening to the things you have to say and really there with you, we might feel very, very connected. So the time and the energy are two completely different things. By the way, really important principle for romantic relationships, to recognize that your energy and your time are not the same. But that applies to work and productivity very closely. Because if you are truly dedicating real energy to a piece of work, you're going to create significantly better outcomes than your time ever would. If I spend 2 hours emailing, but I'm sort of just multitasking, doing a whole bunch of different things, I'm probably not going to be able to get as good of quality of output done as if I truly dedicated 15 to 30 minutes of very focused energy into the thing. So I have thought a lot from a productivity standpoint about how I deploy really discrete blocks of energy into singular tasks during the course of the day. Time blocking and sort of time constraining things that I know have a tendency to bleed out during the course of the day, to kind of force myself to get them done during shorter windows of time, and then allowing myself the space to focus on the bigger creative projects that require more of my energy over longer periods of time.
Yeah, like just spreading it out.
Yeah, Arthur Brooks calls this ventilating your calendar, like breathing air into your calendar, especially for creative work or for the like big, meaty, complex projects that you have to deal with that sort of require that space. There's this idea called Parkinson's law that work expands to fill the time allotted for its completion. So like if you give yourself 3 hours to do your email, you'll take 3 hours to do your email. Where if you give yourself 30 minutes to do your email, you'll get it all done in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And so using that principle and applying that to your day is really effective because it forces you to actually get those things done. And I literally, if you went and looked at my calendar, I have actual windows blocked where I do those things that I know I need to just get them done quickly and efficiently and just knock them out to give myself the space to breathe on the creative projects, whether it's the writing or whatever the other things are.
Awesome. So a lot of like to-do lists or, just the fact that you need to get certain things done most likely creatively or, just like organizational stuff comes from like goals, right? Like I want to get to this promotion or I want to get to writing a book or running a podcast. It can be anything. So a lot of people stress on goal setting, but you speak a lot about anti-goals as well. So talk to me a little bit about where that came from.
Yeah. The idea of anti-goals is that just as important as knowing where you want to go is knowing where you want to avoid along the way. Charlie Munger had the famous quote, "All I want to know is where I'm going to die, so I never go there."
Have you read that book?
Poor Charlie's Almanac?
No,
or a different
it's called I Want to Know Where I'm Going.
Oh, no, I haven't.
It's by that line.
Okay.
And it's a full-on conversation between Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. And it is insane. Like you just through conversations and pieces of interviews with this guy, it's like partially fiction.
Yeah.
But the amount you learn, because a lot of it is based on their interviews and their actual interactions, it's insane. You should definitely
I will definitely read it. I was fortunate to spend some time with both of them when Charlie was around. Just insanely wisdom rich conversations. But the idea with anti-goals is, as you set forward what your big goals are for the coming years of your life, you need to know what you want to avoid during the pursuit of those goals. So an example, maybe you want to become the CEO of your company or be a CEO. That's a great goal. The anti-goal associated with that might be that you don't want to end up losing your family along the way. You don't want to end up being on the road 200 days out of the year and burning your relationship with your children or with your partner, with your spouse. So now you have a goal and you have an anti-goal. You want to end up being the CEO and driving towards that, but not at the expense of these other things along the journey, not at the expense of these other things that are important in your life. Knowing where you want to avoid and where you want to go gives you kind of both pieces of the puzzle. Because what I've found and what we've seen over and over again with these successful people that we all celebrate and laud is that they go and achieve these great things and we celebrate them, but at what cost to these other areas of their life? The top 10 richest people in the world on the Forbes 100 list have 13 combined divorces among them.
No.
13 divorces among 10 people. So what's the win? What am I supposed to be celebrating there? That's not, at least for me, that's not what I would define as a wealthy life.
Exactly.
I want meaningful relationships as part of that. So defining the anti-goals just as clearly as the goals is a really useful exercise.
Yeah, it's almost like, okay, here's how I want to get there, but this is not the route I want to take.
Yeah, I don't want to become ultra rich, but also weigh 400 pounds and be extremely unhealthy.
Or be ultra rich and alone.
Yeah, and alone. I have zero desire to be on a yacht by myself.
Exactly.
Or with friends that are bought friends, which a lot of these people do have, right?
Or
They're friends
yeah.
who are fake. They're just around because you have money and you're paying for certain things and they're clinging on to everything you have. By the way, it's the reason that there's so many people that are rich yet miserable.
Yeah.
And it makes no sense, right? When you don't have money, all you think is that you're going to be happy when you have money.
Yeah.
And then you see people that have a whole lot of money that somehow aren't happy, and it breaks the logic in your brain. You're like, no, I would definitely be totally fine. But it happens over and over and over again, because beyond a certain level, money is no longer the thing that creates incremental happiness. Yeah. Up to a certain level, it definitely is. 100%, the science shows this. Up to a certain level, money reduces stress and burdens. It improves your happiness because you can meet certain pleasures. You can, have your certain needs met in your life. But beyond that, it's these other things. It's free time. It's relationships. It's your health. It's all of these other, it's purpose, it's meaning, it's these other things that actually create the incremental happiness gains.
Yeah, like every subsequent zero just adds only that much more to your life when you start expanding.
Almost none.
Yeah, exactly.
And by the way, I've done this. Like, I've gone through this in my own experience with making more and more money over the course of my life. And I know the points at which it no longer drove incremental happiness for me. What did drive incremental happiness for me was really taking control of my health, really prioritizing relationships, finding work that I found a ton of purpose and meaning around. Those were the things that actually created more happiness in my life, not an incremental dollar sitting in my bank account.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about time. So you speak about these 5 constructs of wealth. So we'll go into time first. You've introduced the concept of Time Billionaire. What is it? And explain to us, how does it kind of factor into the holistic flywheel of just wealth?
So Graham Duncan is a well-known investor based out of, I believe, Santa Barbara. And he was the first one I ever heard articulate this idea of the time billionaire. And the concept is that we know what a dollar billionaire is, having $1 billion. Yeah. A time billionaire is someone that has over 1 billion seconds left in their life. So it's a funny thing of just the math that 1 million seconds is about 11 days, but 1 billion seconds is 30 years. Wow. And it's like kind of a crazy, just like, you don't think about the math of that, and it's crazy. 1 billion seconds is 30 years. So when you're 20 years old, statistically speaking, you have about 2 billion seconds left in your life if you live until you're 80.
Yeah.
Maybe not even optimistically.
That
might be about right globally. About 2 billion seconds left. Yeah. And when you're 50, you have about 1 billion seconds left. And the idea is that people don't relate to themselves as being a time billionaire. You think to yourself like, oh, I have all these things I need to do, and you're wasting your time on a daily basis, when what really matters is time. It's your most precious asset. And it's the one asset that you can't make more of. You can't create more time along the way. And the way that I think about bringing this to life is the idea that you ask people, would you trade lives with Warren Buffett? He's worth $130 billion. But you wouldn't trade lives with him because he's 95 years old. So you would not trade his $130 billion for the amount of time that you have left on this planet. Right. And similarly, he would probably trade all of the money that he has in his bank account for the amount of time that you have left. So the time that you have has legitimate, real value. But you don't think about that on a daily basis. You're not relating to yourself in that way. And so shifting your mindset around that, recognizing the immense value that your time has and how important it is to recognize and be aware of because of how impermanent it is, that is where you find all of the real gold in life.
Yeah, like how many seconds did we just cross while talking about time and seconds? It's crazy to think about it like
it's crazy, and you're never going to get it back.
Yeah. So, when you talk about time, the most common thing that people say, and this is like across the board, right? Like, it doesn't matter whether you're actually truly busy or like if you're just chilling on a couch, is that I don't have time. I'm too busy. I'll do this at a later stage, right? Whether it's meeting with your parents, meeting with your family, or like a friend that you've been putting off, or like a project that you just don't want to get to. It's like the common fundamental excuse is like, I don't have time, I'll do it later.
Mm-hmm.
How can people shift their mindset from this mindset of scarcity almost to a mindset of, you know, you have these many years to go, and like, how do you optimize for that?
Yeah. Say no to stupid stuff and say yes to things that create energy. I think the reason most people don't have time is because they're saying yes to a whole lot of energy draining things and somehow saying no to the things that would have created energy in their life. If you are saying yes to a bunch of friends that aren't adding a whole lot of value in your life just because they're old friends and maybe they're toxic and they don't lift you up and they don't help you become a better person, you should start saying no to those people. If you're saying yes to a whole bunch of random professional opportunities that are not actually exciting to you, that aren't actually leading to your growth, to your stimulating intellectual curiosity, you should start saying no to more of those opportunities to free up time to spend on the things that are creating energy in your life. Because again, if your time is finite, how you spend your time is really important. You would much rather spend a unit of time on something that is lifting you up, that feels very energy creating, that feels purpose creating for you, that is higher leverage, than that same unit of time on something that is draining, something that's making you feel dead after you do it.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are some of the practices or techniques that you use in your life to kind of implement or maximize this time wealth that you want to generate?
Yeah. I think the most powerful one that anyone can do today is what I call my energy calendar technique. So pull up your calendar, and at the end of every workday for a week, color code your calendar, the activities from your calendar from the day. If it was energy creating, meaning if you felt good after doing it, mark it green. If it was energy neutral, didn't feel anything, mark it yellow. And if it was energy draining, you felt sort of tired, mark it red. At the end of a week, if you do that, you're going to have a very clear visual perspective on the types of activities that created energy for you versus drained energy for you. It's going to look either very green or very red on your calendar. Now, what you do with that information is you slowly try to reposition your calendar to be more green than red. It's never going to be perfect. Your calendar is never going to be entirely green. If it is, I applaud you. But the idea is, can you slowly make changes to things to have more energy creating activities and fewer energy draining? That includes the people that you spent time with, as I said earlier.
So this is personal and professional both?
It's both.
Okay.
It's anything you were doing. If you spent time with people that are consistently draining energy for you,
it'll be in red. And
it'll be red. And you should know that you shouldn't be spending as much time with those people because they are not creating energy in your life. Mm-hmm. We all have people, by the way, in our lives that are like that. And if it's family, it's sometimes the hardest thing. But repositioning your time to spend more of it on things that are energy creating has an enormous impact. And there are tiny ways to do that, by the way. Like, I find that Zoom meetings and phone calls are extremely energy draining. And if I looked at my calendar when I initially did this, there was a ton of red that was just that. Every single day, there was calls, there were Zooms that were red. What I noticed was that if I went on a walk while doing one of those, it became energy creating. Wow. I really like being outside and walking in the fresh air. It makes me more focused. I'm more engaged in the calls. All of those things made it much better. So I was able to turn at least half of those phone calls into walking calls. I just go out for a walk while I'm on the call with the person. I'm much more present. The call goes better. It's much better engagement with the person.
You're working out.
Like, yeah, you're moving, you're working out. It feels good. And suddenly something that was very energy draining is now energy neutral or energy creating. And it makes a huge difference when you kind of play that out over the course of a week. Now think about compounding that over a month, over a year. A huge, huge difference to how you feel and the way that you interact. It effectively changes your life with a tiny intervention. Right. So when people say like, oh, well, I don't have control over my day because my boss makes me do all these things, there are tiny interventions like that you can take that have a pretty dramatic impact on how you feel.
Okay, that's awesome. Let's talk about physical wealth. What is physical wealth? Your
health and vitality. I mean, this is, it's the most it's the most natural and sort of entropic form of wealth, meaning subject to the natural decay of your body and how you feel over time. And so I think of physical wealth as being all about how you are controlling the controllables in relation to your health. Are you doing the things to make sure that you are fighting against that natural decay as you get older over time?
So how do you build for those people who like find health and physical extremely complex, right? Like there are people who just like detest it, like the anxiety to go to the gym or like sweat. Or you go back to what we were talking about earlier with time wealth, which is I don't have the time. I'm in 9 to 6. I'm like super busy. I'm exhausted by the time I get home. I do not have the time. How do you build physical wealth?
So there are 3 pillars of physical wealth. I'll simplify it as I do in the book. Movement, nutrition, and recovery are the 3 things. Now, I think of a video game analogy with physical wealth as the most useful one. There's levels to physical wealth, from level 1, which is starter, to like level 100, say, which unfortunately, level 100 is all that you're sold on social media. It's the person telling you the like insane 2-hour-a-day workout regimen, the like crazy diet, health hacks.
Which you do for like a day or 2 and then just...
and they're so complicated or they're so expensive or they're so intimidating that you won't do them if you're just trying to start out. All you need to think about is the tiny action at level 1. It's the super simple basic to just get momentum, to start creating momentum on your health journey. So for movement, move your body for 30 minutes a day. Literally doesn't matter what you're doing. It could be walking, it could be running. If you like dancing, my sister, when she was trying to start her health journey, she loves dancing. So she would dance for 30 minutes a day. Any way that you can just move your body for 30 minutes a day, that checks the box on level 1 of your movement. And by the way, level 1 in all of these gets you like 80% of the way there. You don't need to do the complex hour at the gym, 2 hours at the gym, cardio,
like
4 days.
Causes like so much stress and anxiety.
Causes more anxiety than it's worth. And it doesn't provide the incremental benefit. So start at level 1. That's movement. For nutrition, just try to eat single ingredient foods, like simple, where you can just say the name of the ingredient that you're eating. The biggest issues for people with their diet come from the ingredient labels that are like 20 ingredients. It's the processed foods, the things that have like a whole bunch of chemicals on it that you can't pronounce the name. Just eat foods that you could either like go out and hunt or pick. And if you do that, again, you're 80% of the way there. And if you can just do that like 80% of the time, it doesn't mean that you need to not cheat, not have an ice cream now and then with your friends, not have a drink now and then. That's level 100. Like you can just be 80% compliant and again, make progress. And then for recovery, just sleep 7 hours a night. Like you don't need to complicate it. There doesn't need to be a million, sleep gadgets and trackers. I don't wear a sleep tracker. Like you don't need to do all that. Just try to get 7 hours of sleep a night. Go to bed at the same time and wake up at the same time every day. And again, that gets you 80% of the benefit with none of the anxiety.
But, when you talk about sleep, it is the most complicated topic, right? Like people, it's one of the most Googled questions is how do I sleep better? Because people are just so confused with the fundamental that is like as natural as breathing. But because of everything that's surrounding varying factors, right? It could be stress. It could be the fact that you're exposed to your blue light right before you sleep. There's like non-stop list of what could go wrong with sleep.
And it gets in your head. Then you start thinking about like, oh, I can't sleep. And so you're sitting there thinking about it. I have two things that have really worked for me.
So what was?
Because I was a bad sleeper, like a really bad sleeper, insomnia. I couldn't sleep. 2 things like that completely changed that. How many hours
would you sleep?
My first 7 years of my career, I probably averaged 4 or 5 hours a night. And I was very unhealthy. If you could see me, like I was overweight, my skin was really bad. I looked like a different person. You could put it, I'll send you a picture afterwards. You put it in the show notes. 2 things really helped. So one, people always talk about journaling as being really helpful. I could never get myself to journal because I thought journaling meant 30 minutes of like sitting down and just like this fancy journaling. What I did was I realized I needed the tiny, super simple version of that. So before bed, every single night, I sit down and I do what I call my 1-1-1 journaling method, which is you write down 1 win from the day. That's just something you feel good about that you did. 1 point of stress or anxiety, something that was sort of causing you tension. And then 1 point of gratitude, something that you felt grateful for during the day. Do that right before bed and you get into bed with like an immediate feeling of calm
Like
and
release
relaxation.
almost.
Because writing the thing that you're stressed about down has this magical effect that you like got it off your brain and onto the paper. It's no longer the thing that's sitting swirling around in your head while you're lying in bed at night.
Yeah.
The second strategy that works really well is just a breathing technique. That's called the 4-7-8 method. So you breathe in for a 4 count, hold for a 7 count, and then release for an 8 count. And if you do that 3 to 5 times, it immediately puts you into like this state of calm that allows you to fall asleep more quickly. It's what like the military use for sleeping anywhere, whenever they're on the go. Lots of high performers use it. It triggers your parasympathetic nervous system, which is your kind of rest and recovery nervous system. And it takes 30, 60, 60 seconds to do it 3 to 5 times. And immediately gets you into that state of calm to fall asleep.
And these two things have enabled you to sleep 7 hours.
I sleep 7 to 8 hours a night consistently and feel great.
And do you wake up or not really?
I'm a great sleeper now.
Okay.
Completely changed my life, seriously.
That's insane.
Yeah.
And it sounds so simple to do with like very little time investment.
Almost no time investment.
Yeah.
One of them, the breathing is just lying in bed
And
when you lie down and breathing in that certain way to just calm yourself. Yeah. Because most sleep problems come from like your brain is spinning.
You're thinking.
So you need to just shut down. Yeah. And the little journaling and then the shutting down really helps.
How consistent have you been with it?
Every night.
Since how many years?
At least the last 2 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's so easy. Like I'm a big believer, and the whole book is based around this in the different guide sections, is like the tiny action that you can just do consistently is much more effective than the big fancy action that you're going to do once a month.
Yeah.
And so like that's my issue with all of these like fancy, social media courses, all the millions of things that people are trying to sell you as interventions, is like those might be great on paper, but they're no good if you're not going to do them every single day.
You're not able to implement them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about mental wealth. What is mental wealth, and how do you define it? How do you see it, and how has it evolved for you?
Yeah, so mental wealth is a dynamic one. It is all about your purpose, your growth mindset, as we talked about, your ability to grow and change as a person, and your ability to create space in your life. And so when I talk about space, this is important because it's this idea that you have constant stimulus in your life, all of these things happening to you, all of these things happening in your world, and your ability to create a separation between that stimulus and then whatever your response is going to be, to just breathe in that space, is really important for your life.
Yeah.
And that can be meditation, that can be walking, that can be spirituality, prayer practice. However it is that you are creating space, you need to create some space in your world. So that's what mental wealth is. It surrounds those kind of 3 pillars, as it were.
Yeah. And when you talk about like spirituality, or you talk about meditation, like you spoke about earlier, how does one implement these things into their life without it being like overwhelming, right? Like I meditate, and every time I talk about meditation, the question I get is, but like, how do I meditate? I keep thinking, or like my brain is on overdrive and like I go crazy. Like I have to get out of meditation immediately. So what would you recommend?
Well, I think meditation is a very personal thing, first off. And so the idea, I'm the same way, by the way, as the people that have said that to you. Yeah. My idea of what meditation used to be sitting like a monk, for like an hour a day, upright, cross-legged, sitting there. I go stir crazy like within 30 seconds, right? My brain's running. I like feel uncomfortable. My back hurts. There's like all sorts of reasons that I can't do that. I find walking with no technology to be extremely meditative. Yeah. And I can do that on a daily basis. I can go for a 5-minute walk, 10-minute walk, and completely reset and create that little bit of space in my life. So whenever I have something that is creating stress or some problem that I'm wrestling with, I do what I think of as a walking meditation. I just go out for a walk around the block. It could be like walking around my office for all I care. Just some little bit of movement without technology, without the stimulus. You shut that off and you just allow yourself to sort of be with your own thoughts. Finding that version of that for you is the really important thing. Like John Rockefeller, who at one point in history was like the richest person alive, used to basically walk around his garden on a daily basis. He wasn't like, there was no podcast. He wasn't listening to podcasts. There was no audiobooks. He wasn't like taking notes. He would literally just go and walk around on a daily basis. You need to find your garden as it were, in your own life. You need to find your version of that garden so that you can create that space on a daily basis.
Yeah, where you're like completely one, and there's like no like distraction, or you're not like thinking about 1,000 things. Like a lot of people find cooking extremely therapeutic, or painting, or I find reading therapeutic. Like if you leave me with a book, like you can find me like 3 days later I wouldn't have moved. So if you can be that still, it's that form of meditation, which is what the preconceived notion is what you said. Like it's a monk, you have to be sitting upright and like you're in a super uncomfortable position and like meditating. When it comes to awareness about mental health in the context of mental wealth, what is your opinion on how one should look at their mental health and how to look after it?
I think it's extremely important. And I think in this day and age in particular, we live in a time where there is more awareness than ever of the importance of mental health and more resources than ever. And especially for men, I have found this to be a really important thing. I mean, I had a lot of teammates during my baseball days who were suffering. And it was in a culture and in a society where it wasn't accepted for men to be struggling. And to talk about that in a baseball locker room would have been crazy, like blasphemy at the time. I mean, we would have gotten made fun of. And it's so sad to me in hindsight, because all we ever really wanted was to help each other, but we didn't create an environment where that was possible. Now, opening up to other people, whether you're a man, a woman, anything, is encouraged. And that vulnerability actually breeds strength. And so that mindset shift has been really important for me. The vulnerability, the acknowledgement that opening up about your weaknesses, opening up about the things that you are struggling with actually makes you stronger. It doesn't make you weaker. Is a really powerful realization that has changed my life in many ways.
And it's interesting that you say especially men, because it's so normal for people to consider men to be like tough and like don't share and don't emote. So yeah, definitely get that. You also talk about the Feynman technique, and a lot of it on like clarity and how that serves you. And obviously clarity in general is what people can use to center themselves. So what is the technique and how can people apply it?
The Feynman technique is the most powerful way to learn anything new. It's named after Richard Feynman, who was an American theoretical physicist. He won the Nobel Prize for, I think, like his study in quantum electrodynamics, whatever that means. We could look it up on ChatGPT or something. It sounds complicated. But his real genius and what he was known for was his ability to take very complex topics and distill them into something simple and understandable. So the Feynman technique is the idea that the most powerful way to learn is to teach in simple terms. So if I were to learn something new, and I'm trying to learn something new, the fastest way for me to learn it would be to try to teach it to you, someone that doesn't understand it. The idea in the book is to teach it to a 5-year-old, but the 5-year-old can be someone who doesn't an uninitiated person on the concept. If I teach it to you and I observe, where are you understanding the things I'm saying? Where are you not understanding? Where are you confused? Where are you asking more questions? Where are you kind of like looking puzzled? Now I know where I need to deepen my knowledge. I know where I need to study more to understand it in more depth, to actually be able to clearly articulate the concept. That is the Feynman technique in a nutshell. It's to default to teaching very quickly and to use what you learn from teaching it to go deeper on your knowledge on the topic.
When is the last time you used it?
Every single day.
Really?
Oh, every single day. I mean, every single time I learn a new concept, I carry around this little notebook with me everywhere I go. Whenever I write something down in here, one of the first things I do is try to teach it to someone. So either my wife or a friend, and I'll say like, oh, I learned this really cool new concept and I want to talk to you about it and tell you about it. And you immediately know where you're not articulating it very clearly. Writing really helps with this as well. So if you don't have someone to actually teach it to,
just write it down.
Write it down and then read it back and say like, would I have understood that if I was reading it? And if the answer is no, you know you have more work to do.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Yeah. Let's talk about social wealth. So, you know, it's really funny because we're constantly living in a dichotomy where we're hyper connected more than ever before. You have like 1,000 social media platforms and you can reach out to people, but there is like a loneliness epidemic where It's literally like people feel extremely isolated, even if they're surrounded by people, either virtually, digitally, or physically. Um, in that context, how can people really build meaningful connections and build on their social wealth?
Yeah, this is such an important discussion. I mean, there is scientific evidence that the strength of your relationships is the single greatest determining factor of your health. The Harvard study of adult development was this famous study done over the course of 80 plus years. They tracked the lives of 1,300 participants. And what they found was that the single greatest predictor of health at age 80 was relationship satisfaction at age 50. So it wasn't their blood pressure, it wasn't their cholesterol, it wasn't any of these health factors that impacted their health at age 80 the most. It was their relationships, how they felt about the other people in their world. So what greater reason do you need to focus and prioritize those relationships than knowing that they literally create your happiness, but also your health over the course of your life? They literally make you a healthier person. And I saw this firsthand. I mean, my grandmother, who was born and raised in Bangalore, India, was one of the most social people I've ever met. Like an unbelievable storyteller, so vibrant, into her 90th birthday, which was right before COVID started. Incredible. I mean, she was thriving in many ways. She was in a Scrabble club. She was great. Health and just incredible shape. COVID hit and the lockdown started. When I went back to see her just a year-ish later, she was almost catatonic. And it was because she had been totally isolated over the course of a year. And within a day of spending time with myself and with my parents who had come to visit her, it was like she had new life breathed into her. Suddenly, she was so vibrant and back, and it was like her brain was working again, and she was connected in a new way again. So we saw it in such a real and clear and visceral way that social connection, your connection to people, so impacts how you interact and your feelings around the world. And today, we live in a world now where it is easier than ever to be totally disconnected, to feel connected through our phones sitting in our pockets, but to not actually have the human interaction that's around us. There was a statistic recently that teenagers are spending 70% less time in person with their friends than they were 20 years ago. 70% less time in person. It's insane. It's terrifying to think about. And then you compound that, like 15% of men say that they don't have a single close friend. 60% of people say they don't have a single person who knows them well in the world. It's terrifying to think about the impact that is going to have on your happiness and on your health over the course of your life. So that all goes to say, prioritizing your relationships is one of the most important things you can do. There are simple ways that you can do that on a daily basis. It's as simple as sending the text to the friend that you care about. Actually sending them a message to just let them know that you care about them. Spending time with the people that you feel like lift you up, distancing yourself from the people that are dragging you down. And embracing those relationships and recognizing that investments in relationships really pay dividends in the same way that a financial investment does. You can't expect people to be there for you if you aren't there for them. You can't expect a relationship to just be there if you don't invest in it.
It's not like unidirectional. It's always it's always both ways. You know, it's so funny because when you were talking about your grandmom, I was thinking about this gentleman who works with my dad in his office building. I mean, not in his company, in his office building. And he's like 92 years old. And my dad is like, he goes to work every single day. And he got hit by COVID. And as you know, like a lot of people got hit by COVID, didn't make it. Mm-hmm. He made it out because he was like, I need to go back to work. I have work pending. I need to do it. His like brain is so hyperactive that he's meeting all these people. He's learning people. So we interviewed him for Humans of Bombay. And he told us about an Instagram trend. And I was like, what? And he literally was like, yeah, I saw this on Instagram and we should try that. And I'm like, oh my God, there's a 92-year-old person who wants to do an Instagram trend because of just how good he is, right? Like just socially. So I totally get it.
Yeah. I tell this story in the book of a close family friend of ours named Hank Bihar, who's now 99 years old. And when he turned 90, his wife asked him what he wanted for his birthday. And she thought he was going to say like a vacation or a cruise or a dinner or something. And he said, I've always wanted to see what those geniuses were up to at Harvard. And my dad is a professor at Harvard. So his wife reached out and said, could you arrange for him to go to a class or something? So my dad arranged for it. And so Hank, on his 90th birthday, put on like a pair of slacks and a little sweater and went and sat in the front row of these 3 freshman introductory classes at Harvard. And the image of a 90-year-old man sitting in an astronomy 101 class, learning about the solar system and planets and black holes and the sun, and it's just amazing to think about. And so now, like when I think about the fact that he's 99 and still thriving, still reading the news every day, still, excited about learning, still excited about new things out in the world, there's no utility to him learning about astronomy, right? He's not going to make money on it. There's no side hustle for him in astronomy.
Space.
Yeah, he's just learning for the sake of learning because he enjoys it. And that is the real fountain of youth with all of this stuff, right? It's your continued engagement with the world in some way. It's following your curiosity. That is what keeps us young.
That's insane. And you've written about him in your book.
In the book,
is there a photo at Harvard?
No, there actually isn't. Unfortunately, there's no photo of him at Harvard, but there is a photo of him.
Okay, okay, amazing. I'm looking forward to seeing it. It sounds
it's the best.
amazing. Okay, so you talk about something called the helped, heard, and hugged framework. What is it?
The best.
Yeah. The short version
this is the best. Yeah, this is the best. This has changed my relationship with my wife. Okay. So when someone comes to you with a problem, you ask, do you want to be helped, heard, or hugged? And this is a very clear acknowledgement of what they actually want from you in that moment. I would say this is particularly impactful for a romantic relationship and particularly impactful for any men out there that are listening to ask this question to your partner, because men in particular have a tendency to be fixers. And I know this very well, unfortunately, that my tendency when my wife would come to me with any sort of problem or something that she wanted to vent about was to try to fix it. And I would sit there and listen. And then I would say, well, you could have done this differently. And what if you thought about it this way or that? And she would get so frustrated with me and want to kill me. And rightfully so, because all she really wanted was for me to listen or for me to just listen and give her a hug. And asking this question is the simplest way to clearly create a pattern of what does this person actually need from you in that moment. Yeah. Because the fixing mentality it's inherently selfish. It's like, oh, I'm going to fix this problem. I want to fix it because I'm being included and I can fix this problem. Yeah. If that's not what the other person wants, you're not meeting them where they want you to be. So you are not actually providing the thing that they want you to provide in that moment. Asking this question fundamentally changed how I think about relationship challenges, conflict, and navigating all of those kind of ups and downs.
And I'm totally with your wife. Because sometimes you just want to vent to vent.
Yeah.
Like you don't really want a solution. Yeah. Just like it's been the worst day ever. And this is why. And there's no solution to it. The day's gone. There's nothing I can do at all to fix what's happened. I just want to talk about it.
Yeah, it's a love languages, right? There's the 5 love languages, and like touch is a big one. Just being there to hug someone, and it's an act of service in a lot of ways to just sit there and listen. That is an act of service to the other person, to sit there and be there and just listen.
Yeah, a really good friend is a good listener.
Yes,
like you just listen.
I mean, one of the most underrated like green flags in a relationship is someone who is just willing to sit there and be quiet with you.
Yeah.
Like they don't need to talk.
You don't need to fill the silence.
No, you don't need to fill the silence. Yeah. And like they can sit there and just be silent. Yeah. And when they know and can sense that you are stressed and that you need you have pent up aggression that you sort of just need to wind down, they're willing to just sit there in the silence with you.
I feel so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You talk a lot about falling in love versus growing in love. Walk me through that.
Yeah. This is one that I've thought about and experienced a lot with my wife. This is the idea that falling in love is very easy and growing in love is very, very hard. Falling in love is all about the picturesque moments. Yeah. This is like the Instagram filtered version of what love looks like. It's the fancy dates, the vacations, the beautiful manicured moments. But that's really not what life is. Life is really about the challenges, the struggles, the crawling through the mud, the sitting in those challenging moments with someone. And that is where growing in love happens. That is how you grow in love with someone. It's actually wrestling with those things. It's not avoiding the hard conversations. It's working through those struggles. So you need to find someone that you can grow in love with. You need to find someone where you're both on the same page, that the growth is much more important than the falling phase.
Yeah, that's profound, because like everybody looks forward to the falling phase, the growing, but the growing phase is actually where you live it and you go through life.
Yeah. And most of life is, I've said this before, like most of life is doing nothing.
Yeah.
Before I got married, a friend asked me how I knew that Elizabeth, my wife, was the one. And what I told him was that it was because I loved doing nothing with her.
Yeah.
And what I meant by that was I was just as happy sitting on the couch doing nothing, not even watching a show, just sitting there doing nothing, as I was on some fancy vacation or date with her. And most of life is that. Most of life is sitting on the couch doing nothing. It's just sitting there and being with a person in their presence. How do you feel? When you find someone that you're happy doing nothing with, that is your person.
Yeah. So, when you talk about growing in love, the value of relationships change over time, right? Like you also have different relationships, have different contexts as you make your way through life. Like when you're in your early 20s, your early 30s, you're building a career. When you move on to having a family, all of these obviously have parallels with each other, but because of that, it's up and down. Like it can never be just a flat line. So how do people approach the fact that your social wealth will change basis the phase of life that you're in?
I think there's a natural tendency that people have to fear the loss of relationships and to feel like every friend that they have needs to be a friend for life. Yeah. And the reality is we're much more like hermit crabs. Like we really have a shell that we exist in during one season of our life. And it's totally fine for us to move on to a different environment, to move on to a different shell as we continue to progress and change. I'm sure people have experienced this. I have had moments in my life where I am growing and changing, interested in different things, where it suddenly feels like I am no longer speaking the same language as the friends that were from my prior life.
Yeah,
like it feels like completely different. My values, my things I'm excited about, my focuses completely change. And I almost no longer have anything that we have in relation to one another. There's almost no connection there anymore. It is totally okay to have those people change across different seasons. You may have 5, maybe 10 people who are there with you across all of the seasons of your life. It might be a sibling, it might be your parents, it might be your partner, it might be your child. Not many. There might be a couple of friends who are there across all of the seasons. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Trying to cling to people from prior seasons because they were there when they are no longer a fit for what you are trying to do and for your vision for the future is the source of a lot of strain in people's lives. Yeah. So the willingness to just allow relationships to be leaves that sort of fall off a tree and to continue moving forward in your own life and on your own journey is a very empowering realization.
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost like that feeling of like you let go and it's okay. It doesn't have to be sour. It just you like naturally eked it out and moved on.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's sort of like active release and there's passive release. Like the passive release is just allowing the leaves to fall. Yeah. Active release is like there's a toxic thing in your life that you need to get rid of, or there's a confrontation, a hard conversation that you need to have. But most things don't come down to that.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about financial wealth. And it's especially great to be talking to you about it because you've lived and breathed that version of yourself a few years back. You talk about the 5 pillars of financial wealth. What are they?
5 levels, that is.
5 levels, 5 pillars.
Yeah. This is just a way that I've thought about financial wealth over the course of your life is, the earliest levels are going to be about meeting those basic needs. And this is kind of getting to the point where you have those basic needs covered: food, shelter, the things that are like basic necessities of life. If you do not have that level met, you're probably not listening to this podcast today. Yeah. As you rise through these levels towards level 5, which I would characterize as you have passive generation of income off of your assets that is well in excess of any expenses that you could possibly have. That is sort of extreme and final financial independence. As you progress, the problems and things that you're focused on change. And the entire goal as you go through this is to build an asset base that is compounding. So when I think about financial wellness and reaching financial independence, I really think of three things. I think of building income and building an income engine, whether that's through primary employment, side hustles, entrepreneurship, whatever it might be. I think of managing expenses. That is the things that you have cash outflows, money going towards. And then creating a gap between the two of those things that you can invest into stuff that compounds over the long term. So having your income exceed your expenses and investing that difference into stuff that will build and compound over long periods of time. That is fundamentally the path that anyone that has gotten wealthy has followed in order to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. You earlier touched upon the enough life. You want to walk me through how people can figure out what is that enough life for them? Because we may talk about it, but most people don't know what that metric is.
Mm-hmm. So the idea of enough is the antithesis of this like chase for more. So much of what we experience in our like comparison driven world is wanting more and more, and you get to the thing that you thought would make you happy, and then there's just another layer. There's just another kind of ring that you need to achieve in order to get. You get the car that you always dreamed of, and then you immediately see someone with a nicer one, and you're like, well, I want that. Or you get the house and you realize it's not in the right part of town. You get the club membership, but then you realize the fancier club is the one you should be a part of. There's always that next level. And so if you're constantly deriving happiness from your comparison to others, you will never achieve happiness. Enough is all about identifying very clearly what will be that version of your life that you are content with. And that is a present definition that you are trying to drive into a very clear version of your imagination so that it can't constantly inflate.
Yeah.
Or that at least it can't happen subconsciously.
Correct.
Hedonic treadmill is real. Humans have a natural tendency to reset at a new baseline. But knowing very clearly what that version of your life looks like is important. And it doesn't have to be like some Spartan, simple lifestyle.
Yeah.
My version of what my enough life looks like involves me having a vacation home where I can host people because I love hosting people and creating experiences and positive things. That is like a pretty high degree of wealth on a global scale for me to have that. But that is my version of it.
Yeah.
Now, what I want to know is that when I get to that, I'm going to acknowledge that that is my enough life, that I have enough. And to be honest, I already feel that to some extent, that I am there. And my wife and I make decisions on a daily basis that reflect that. I don't go chase every financial opportunity that I'm handed. I don't go after every opportunity. If you offered me $100 million today to go and work 90 hours a week for the next 10 years or the next 5 years, I wouldn't take it. Because it would mean I was losing out on all that time with my son. It would mean I was losing out on time with my parents or with my wife. All these things that I'm not willing to trade off for money.
Right.
So really sitting down and thinking about what does that enough life look like? What are you doing? Where do you live? How are you living? Are you living in a house? Are you living in an apartment? Is it in a condo? What does the life actually look like to you? Clearly imagining it is a very helpful exercise, and one that I walk through in the book in a very clear way.
Yeah. So you basically just determine that. When you reach that, it's like you acknowledge it first straight up, because what's easy to do is when you reach there, you get momentarily happy and then you're on to the next thing, which is subconsciously what a lot of people do, because like you said, there's just so much social media clutter, or just like comparison by colleague or friend or family, right? Like that, oh my God, like this is the next big thing.
Yeah.
So is acknowledgement the most important
Awareness
step?
of what it is the most important. The next most important is just recognizing that above that level, it's not going to be more money that creates more happiness for you. And the science is very clear around this. Beyond that level, if you are unhappy at that level, more money is not going to make you more happy.
Yeah.
And if you're happy at that level, more money is not going to make you more happy.
Correct.
You're just a happy person, or you're an unhappy person. And if you're an unhappy person, the things that are going to make you happier, it's not money at that point. It's relationships, it's time, it's health, it's these other things, it's purpose, it's meaning, it's these other things. And if you're happy, those are the same things that are going to make you incrementally happier. It's not going to be more money.
Yeah.
So defining what it is, and then realizing once you've reached it that I might want to chase these other things. Like you see it now with a lot of these hyper wealthy people. Mark Zuckerberg, all of a sudden he went from being like nerdy, skinny guy to he's
like
getting super
wrestling.
fit.
Yeah.
Jeff Bezos, the same thing, because all of them are starting to realize that these other things are actually what's driving their health and happiness. When I go and meet with these extraordinary people, entrepreneurs, billionaires, all these things, the number one question I get asked about is my like health and fitness routines.
Really?
It's my cold plunging, it's my like diet, it's my workouts, it's my running. Those are the things they ask about because they value that much more than any of these other areas. Like they don't need advice on how to make money or business, right? They've already done that. They've done that and they've figured that out. But they really struggle with health, or they really struggle with finding routine or like their diet, or what holistically. What should they be eating? What are you doing with, your wife? Like what are the practices? Like those kinds of things are what they are thinking about in their lives now.
Okay. So if we were to simplify it, what is the one skill that you think people need to hone to really start generating income? Oof. Like as a first principle.
Oh, be useful.
Yeah.
Be useful. Charlie Munger, to go back to his wisdom, before he died, when he got asked what he would want people to say about him in his obituary, he said that I tried to be useful. He said, I tried to be useful. Now, this is coming from someone who was worth over $10 billion.
Yeah.
And he defined what he had done as trying to be useful. I think of the desire to be useful as the most essential first principles thing for making money. Because if you put yourself into an environment and you find ways to be valuable, to be useful to everyone around you, it can be the most simple, obvious ways, or it could be identifying different unique ways, you will make money. People will seek you out. People will trust you. People will want you to take on more. They'll give you more opportunities if you just find those ways to be useful, because you're going to be doing these small, simple things well. And when you do that, people trust you and you get the bigger opportunities. And that slowly and steadily compounds towards building a whole lot of wealth.
Okay. And a subsequent question to this is, what is the return on hassle? Something that you talk about.
Yeah. I love the return on hassle idea. So this is this concept that when you think about financial investments, most people think on return on investment.
Yeah.
It's like you put in money and what's my return on that investment? So people are like, oh, I want an 8% return on investment in the stock market, or 20% if I invest in venture capital, or whatever it is. But the idea of return on hassle is that not only is it your return on the investment financially, it's also the return on your hassle, the time that was required to actually make this investment. So if I could invest in buying a apartment building, and it's going to make me a 20% return on my investment, just dollar-wise. Or I could invest in the stock market and make a 20% return on investment. I would much rather invest in the stock market because I don't have to manage a building.
Yeah.
That's a lot of time, right? Like there's hassle involved. I have to go talk to tenants. I have to go like hassle people if they're not paying their rent. I have to maintain it. If the AC blows out or if the water heater goes out, I have to call and get it fixed. So there's all this hassle that you're not calculating into the return. You're not calculating that into the investment that you're actually having to make of time and energy into this thing. And so a lot of the things that look attractive as just pure financial investments become much less attractive when you factor in the hassle associated with them. Yeah. It's why I'm a huge believer in what I do with my own investments, is that the vast majority of my wealth is just invested in the most boring, simple market investments that I'd never have to think about managing or doing anything with. Yeah. When people try to ask me to do different real estate investments or do different things, I'm like, no, I don't do that because I don't want the hassle. I don't want to have to deal with it just for the sake of being able to say I invested in real estate.
Yeah, the flex of it.
Yeah, I don't need that. I have no desire to do that. And by the way, everyone all of these people are like, well, what if, they want a private jet or they want a watch or they want fancy things? Most people would not want that thing if they couldn't tell anyone about it. So I always tell people to ask yourself that before you buy something, ask yourself, do I actually want this thing, or do I just want to be able to tell people that I have this
post
thing?
About it.
Yeah, post about it, show people in public, flex on it, do whatever the thing is. If getting a fancy car is a good example. If you are a car nerd and you love cars and you love the engineering and you love all of that, that might be a good thing for you to invest in because that's cool. It's fun. It's a hobby for you. But if you're getting a car because you want other people to think you're cool, It's really dumb.
Yeah.
Because first off, you're not generating the respect and admiration from the people that you think.
Yeah.
People think when they get a fancy car that like rich people are going to think they're cool. That's not true. Poor people are going to think you're cool. Rich people are just going to be like, oh, that's pretty cringe that you like got this super flex car. Like the richest people I know drive like very nondescript Teslas around or something like that. It's not like a McLaren, roadster that they're riding around in. So distancing yourself from that idea is a really important one.
So I just interviewed MSD, I was telling you, Mahendra Singh Dhoni, and he was like, I have 100 bikes, okay? And we were just like so fascinated with that. We're like, why do you have like 100 bikes? He said, because I just love bikes. And he's like, so I was asking him, he's on Instagram. So he's not like active, but he's on Instagram. He won't post, but he's there. So what do you watch on Instagram? He said, I watch like biking videos, like, with people like cleaning or removing. He's like, the one thing I don't understand and I want to ask people is, why do you put these ridiculous songs in the back? Because I actually want to hear the machine. I want to hear it like, because that's how crazy is it? He is. So if he buys 100 bikes, it just makes sense because it's not for the flex. It's just obsessed with the motorbike. Yeah,
and again, the people that flex are not the people who actually have it.
Exactly.
Like if someone brags to you about their wealth and their success, it's very safe to assume that it's about half of what they're saying.
Yeah.
Because people that are crushing it in life do not feel the need to tell you that they're crushing it. Like he doesn't tell you he has 100 bikes to try to impress you that he has 100 bikes. You know that he's killing it. You know that he is who he is. And so that's really important too to realize is like, again, the people that are constantly loud, they're like posting pictures in front of the jets or with the cars. Something doesn't add up. It's not like the emperor has no clothes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, we're down to the last two questions. My second last question is actually about visualization. You talk about this 80th birthday visualization for physical health, but is there a general visualization exercise or technique that you want to walk people through that they can quickly do or figure out?
Yeah. I think, the early in the book, I have this exercise that I've run through now with hundreds of people. And it is to imagine your ideal day at 80 years old. What are you doing? Who are you with? What are you thinking about? How do you feel? Where are you? Really imagine it in very clear detail. And then think about, how do your actions today line up with creating that future? Because when you really sit down and think about what is going to matter to you at age 80, how do you want to feel? Where do you want to be? Who do you want to be with? You'll often find that your actions in the present are not aligned with creating that future. And as an example for me, my ideal day at age 80 is sitting on a porch next to my wife, grandkids playing in a yard, our kids by our sides, and a bunch of friends coming over for dinner. There's not like a mansion or a private jet or, fancy stuff. It's pretty simple. And yet, in the moment when I said that and defined that, I was exclusively chasing money in what I was doing on a daily basis. And my health was suffering. My relationship with my wife was suffering. My relationship with my parents was suffering. I was not the type of friend that I wanted to be. All of those things that mattered to me in my ideal world at age 80 were not actually being played out in my actions on a daily basis at age 30. And so what it tells you is that you need to make a change. There's a big, big difference for a lot of people between what they say their priorities are and what their actions show their priorities are. If someone were to come in and observe your life, what would they say your priorities really are? If I were to watch you for a week, would it be different than what you say? Or would it be the same?
Okay, that's amazing. I'm down to my last question. We've spoken about 5 different types of wealth and like in extreme detail, but if you had to recommend one action to just begin the process of taking charge of these different pillars, what would that be?
Develop a very clear awareness of the things in your life that are creating energy for you. And that can be activities, that could be people, that could be anything. But develop an awareness of what those are. And then sit down and think about how you can spend more of your days on those things or with those people. If you do that, all the other things sort of start to come into alignment over periods of time.
Yeah. Okay. It's been amazing, Sahil. Thank you so much. And
Thank
good
you.
luck for the book. And we're going to be posting all the links down below for everybody to buy. And I already know it's going to be like a bestseller. So congratulations in advance.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This was great.
We hope this episode added value to your lives. Join the Realign movement. Like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And we'll see you in the next one.